Welcome to Impossible Live. Welcome back if you are joining us again. And you are so in for a magnificent, delicious, rich treat. I'm going to warn you, those who join us normally, you know, have a mug for virtual toast because we celebrate life and our amazing guest today. You are going to want to have a pen nearby. So, for those of you who are joining us, our regulars, grab a pen, grab a piece of paper, or if you're joining us on Team Replay, just give us a shout out. And I am delighted to introduce you to this amazing, fantastic guest. Our guest today is Ben Baker. Best way to reach Ben in between Impossible Lives is on LinkedIn and iambenbaker.com. Now, I need you to know that the M is not lowercase. The M is capital because this wonderful gentleman I was introduced to by one of our prior guests and the first person who kicked off our pre-recorded Impossible Live series, Martin Stark. Many of you know Martin as the Courage Champion. And Martin introduced me to amazing Ben Baker. And the day I met Ben, I was so nervous. So I need to let you know this is somebody who's communicating for growth, helps us relax, it helps us lean in, it helps us be, as Pamela Sterling taught me years ago, show up as your best and your brightest self. This gentleman elevates any situation, any environment, any culture. My testimonial for him, it's still been under work, but you know what? We're going to be able to pull it out and carve it out of this alive, or he'll finally see it on his LinkedIn profile. But at any rate, I would love to just give Ben a chance to introduce wonderful I am Ben Baker. Do not forget, iambenbaker.com. Today, you'll share that site with a friend. You'll share that link with a friend. You'll tune into his podcast. You'll check out his amazing books. And without further ado, Ben, welcome to Impossible Live as a guest.
Mel, you are my one woman wrecking crew PR department. I love you. You're great. You're putting a lot of pressure on me. I mean, shout out to Martin, shout out to Team Live, shout out to Team Replay. I love having these conversations. I think we're going to explore some really neat things today, and I can't wait to see where you take us.
What's really cute is I'm going to have to keep saying wonderful things about Ben, besides the fact that behind the scenes, we just had the most amazing discussion about knishes. And this lovely gentleman helps us elevate the cultures. And that part, we've been talking about that on Impossible Live for a while, and the energy, because I think communicating for growth, many are shrinking back, they're making their voices silent. They're shrinking a little bit. We're being encouraged to not show up as our full self sometimes, and especially as leaders. And Ben and everything he represents and everything he encourages us to do culturally just doesn't align with that. So I am so ecstatic. Ben, let's start with the hard part.
Uh-oh.
Teacher's kid. Why not? No, it's not hard for you. Not hard for you. In terms of communicating in our fragile world, as I'm always calling it, what are some of what you see now are the challenges around us coming up with these strategies, whether it's for a professional culture, not for profit, or organizations of different sizes?
I think the biggest, first of all, thank you for having me on the show. I think the biggest challenge people have is the inability to be bold. You know, benign, banal, boring, commodity communication doesn't do it anymore. People either respond or they don't respond to communication based on how it makes them feel, How do you make people feel when you're communicating with them? Because the trick of communication is not what you say, it's how you're listened to, it's how you're understood, it's how you're valued, and how you compel people to engage with you. Because people want to talk to human beings, humans want to talk to humans humanely. And we need to know what's been, what is, what's going to be. Where are we today? Where are we going? Why are we going there? What's the justification for all this pain and angst and aggravation that we have to endure along the way? Once we get to the top of the mountain, what are we going to see there that we can't see today? What can we do that we can't do now? And if we don't do anything, if we sit on our hands, if we shuffle our feet, if we stand in quickstand, what are the ramifications, both to us individually and collectively, by doing nothing? Communication inspires. Communication draws people to be aligned. Communication challenges people to be better than what they are, either individually or on a collective basis. And when we are boring in our communication, when we are average in our communication, when we are banal in our communication, we are ignored because there is no inspiration there to move forward, and there's no inspiration to be aligned. And so the biggest challenge I say to anybody is be unique, be differentiated, have a point of view, be challenging, not in a controversial way, but in a way that brings people to sit there and say, wait a second, I never thought of that before. I've never done that before. I've never, wait a second, I need to be involved in this. And that's where we need to see communication heading.
Woo, mic drop. And I really appreciate not just the goosebumps you just gave me, and the real good part about this is, just as our guests are watching us live or on team replay, we'll be watching live with them as they check this out on LinkedIn. But you're really reminding us it's not about size matters. It's the reminder our voice matters. It's the reminder our differentiation matters, our path matters. It's something you've been so helpful in helping me kind of open my eyes about, because I think the part about be bold, as an introvert, some teach us we should be quiet. And in some cultures and some organizations, I've run into, I like to call them the people who were my lessons from the universe.
There are a lot of those lessons of the universe, good, bad, and ugly.
Years ago, Sally Hogshead, I read her first book, How to Fascinate. And it was almost the first certification that I pursued. And what I loved was, from a marketing standpoint, she always used to talk about our point of differentiation. And she always had stories about the really, really big brands that she helped mobilize in terms of the differentiation. I raved about her so much that somebody who was one of my lessons from the universe sent me a picture. He got to meet her in person.
Very cool.
And what he said was, "You've been following her for years, and I just thought it was fluff." He says, she had us in the palm of her hand before she walked in. He says she identified in a network marketing room, she identified the leaders.
Absolutely.
And she identified their characteristics in a way that people who were aspiring to be like them could kind of understand. What was on a pen that I loved? Do you know your difference? Company by the name of Pro Deer, one of my favorite pens. And they had this pen. Do you know your difference? Do you value your difference? And that's kind of the crux under the communicating. There's the temptation to be homogenized or pasteurized or sanitized. And I love it because you're saying, even if when we distill it, we should just really, we should go past authentic.
We should own it. We should own it. And let's step back 3 steps and just sit there and say, communication is not just for large enterprise level companies. You communicate as soon as there's 2 people in a building. And your communication has to be as authentic and inspiring and motivating and aligning, whether it's one-to-one communication within a small office, or 1 to 1,000, or 1 to 100,000, or 1 to 1,000,000. And the trick is the different mediums that you use in order to get there, to be able to communicate one-to-one in a way that is relevant to one person or relevant to 1,000,000 people. And how you do that depends on, how do you use the technology that's available to us to be able to utilize that in a way that makes sense to your audience and resonates with your audience and, is impacting your audience. And that's what's important, is that we need to understand that it doesn't matter if there's 2 people in an office or 1,000,000 people in an office. Communication is vitally important. I work in a senior communication leadership roles. Those are the type of roles that I'm looking for. This is what I'm looking for right now, is what's next in my life. But the trick is that you need to be impactful. And you need to be somebody that's inspiring. And you need to be somebody that your job is to make the next generation of leaders better. That's your job as a communicator, as a leader, as a boss, whatever you want to call yourself. Your job is to inspire the next generation to be better versions of themselves. And through that, that's how organizations grow. And how that's done is through effective communication. So that's what I'm talking about. When I'm talking about communicating for growth, it's not only your personal growth, it's the growth of the organization. It's the growth of the people around you. It's elevating everyone. It's floating all boats. And because the sea rises and everybody floats all at once. That's what communication should do, because communication either brings people together or tears people apart. And if you're part of an organization that tears people apart, you eventually become a low-cost, low-value commodity that's easily forgotten and soon replaced.
I love one, I'll just say a vital key in a lot of conversations, a lot of languages with ideal future clients and collaborators. We're always talking about their attempts to generate impact, to create influence, to generate momentum, get some traction. But I love you added full to impactful. It reminds us not necessarily just to consider hitting that bullseye, for lack of a better word, hopefully with gentle foam darts, as opposed to accurate archery targets. We were watching Amazing Race recently, and they had these wonderful people trying to practice, and then they actually had to consistently hit a target. And we watched, I think there were 11 teams. We watched maybe 8 or 9 of them try,
Mm-hmm.
and they were good in practice. And the ones that went through to the final stage, they all left that event. No one completed the assignment.
Wow.
Because I think from a communicating perspective, we think of the glass half empty or the glass half full, or whether it's full, whether there's more capacity in there. But I love that you are reminding us impactful.
Yeah,
Change it, flip the script, flip your perspective.
absolutely. Right on that is that I don't believe the glass is half empty or half full. I think it's refillable.
Mm.
And if we look at the world through a refillable lens and say, okay, we're down a quart. What do we need to do to fill a quart back up? And maybe a quart and a bit, and be able to be better than what you were. But that might require taking 3 steps back, treading water for a bit, understanding where you are, understanding the challenges that you're being, and how do you move forward from here strategically, and then going back and refilling the glass. So
I love
we
that.
need to look at how we approach life and how we approach business in a strategic way to sit there and say, are we impacting people or are we being impactful? And being impactful means that what you're doing is it's not just about you. It's not just the impact that you make. It's how do you enable other people to be impactful, and how do you elevate everybody so across the entire organization, the organization becomes better because you have a whole bunch of people within the organization that feel aligned, valued, and with the purpose and want to be better.
Hmm. I think we want to be better. I was chatting with a collaborator earlier about a project for a wonderful client, and it's for gifts and incentives.
Mhm.
So we try to provide them with good, better, and best so that they have the chance to at least start with the right priorities so that, they can knock it out of the park already. And regardless of which investment level they choose, at least they know that the delivery will be amazing. And I think sometimes in that process, we always think of it's got to be better, it's got to be perfect, it's got to be within the lines. I love my favorite card from my wonderful mother-in-law. Encouraged me to color outside the lines.
I don't
And
even know where the lines are at times.
see, I love that. I love that. I think sometimes too, like you're saying, if we think sometimes of operating within frameworks or
Mm-hmm.
within systems or within parameters, or marketing wants you to hit certain messages and sales wants you to focus on social selling and at the same time be really effective and hit the numbers, the closing ratios. What I love about this client is everything consistently. The one thing they said, and I appreciate it because it was a hard lesson to learn.
Mm-hmm.
They said, "We work with you because you help us avoid mistakes." And I had never heard that. I appreciated the compliment from a client, but we work with you because you're going to keep us safe. We work with you because you're going to help us not make the mistakes. And I think that's one of the hard parts about communicating. Mm,
I love that. I love that because it's not how much money sometimes you make for somebody. It's how much money you save them. It's how do you've been down the hole, you found your way out, and you know how to avoid them. And think of the millions of dollars we can save our customers and our companies that we work with because we can utilize the experience that we have to say, hey, wait a second here. Have you thought about this? Have you looked at that? Have you considered this? I've had another customer they're not exact like you, but they were similar and they ran into the situation and this was the challenges that they run into. Are you seeing that in the marketplace? Yes. Well, here's some things that we did to mitigate this over there. And people take a look and say, oh, they made us $1 million. They made us $5 million. They made us $100 million. Those are great. Nothing wrong with making money. I'm always good at making money. But the question is, how much are you making in terms of net dollars? If you're making $100 million and you have $80 million of mistakes that you're covering up, how much money have you really made? So I look at companies and say, let's innovate from the customer backwards.
mm,
Let's innovate from where do you want to be? Where's the mountaintop and why do you want to be up there? Great, wonderful. Now let's see where we are and not only sit there and put the strategic places in terms of purpose, planning and people to be able to get you to that goal, but let's make sure you don't fall down that 100-foot crevice along the way. and lose 10 people, and have a whole bunch of broken bones by the time you get up to the top of the mountain. So those are the great customers who realize we're as valuable, if not more valuable, because the headaches that we solve for them than the money that we can make for them. And both are important. But the question is how do you do both for a client and now enable them to succeed on their terms?
I love that, because I think it comes back to that amazing question behind your head, which I'm always fascinated by, which
What's
is,
your
what's your
story?
story? I think as we're preparing for an event alchemy about storytelling, and in the midst of a series of trust masterclasses, very, very grateful for the experience around a spiritual concept for me about building deep roots. And I think in the process, the stories, and I love it. One of my coaches, my sister from another mother, who is joining us live. And if she's not joining us live, she's always on team replay. She says to me, I need to know how your stories support the bullet points. And I really appreciated it. She reminds me, teacher's kid, it could always really be organized. But if I wasn't in an environment where I felt that the audience was interested in communicating for growth,
Mm-hmm.
that story had different bullet points. And in the process, just like this client, and I appreciate them, we never asked them, what's our story? So I think, as you would say, and I love it because you said innovate backwards, and I'm a flip the script girl. And, flip the script, because otherwise your lane on the superhighway is not clear. You're in the same lane as everybody else on the multi-lane highway. You're sitting on I-5 in California.
It's
I
like
remember
the
going there
world's
for,
biggest parking lot, the 405.
it was one of the first massive places. I had just got my license, and we went there, and I'm renting the car, and I wanted to drive.
Mm-hmm.
And our cousin's like, I adore you, but it's not happening today.
No, not at all.
Because she had to teach me that communicating for growth sometimes meant communicating for safety. She was a psychiatric nurse. And she says, you're not testing my blood pressure, and you're also not going to test the limits of your insurance. So I laughed. She says, we're going to help you within the communicating lens. And I loved it because she could
Nice.
always make us laugh and
Nice.
tell us a story that we had never thought of, because I think Gloria was an expert at innovate backwards.
But it's
She learned to
also
do it.
telling the story in the language of the audience itself.
Mm-hmm.
I've given the same keynote 140 times around the world. I've given the same keynote 140 times. I will challenge anybody to tell me the 2 times that I've told this, the exact same keynote the exact same way. Because the way your cousin would tell a story to you might be different from the way they tell the story to me. My reference, my point of view, my history, my belief structure is not exactly the same as yours. And therefore, the analogies used for you, that you sit there go, I get that. I totally get that. I'm in line, no problem. I understand exactly what you're saying. I'm sitting there going, huh? And when we create a story, it's not so it's crystal clear in our mind. It's how it's crystal clear in the mind of the people that are listening. And it motivates them to move forward in a way that works for everybody, because they understand that, like, I'm not going to tell the same story to lawyers as I am to engineers, as I am to accountants, as I am to construction workers. The message will be the same. The end lesson learned will be the same, but I'll get there differently based on the audience in front of me. And that's important to know. Who are you speaking to? What's their point of reference? How are they coming to the situation? What are the things that they need to be successful moving forward? And if you can't speak in the language of your audience, it doesn't resonate. And if it doesn't resonate, it doesn't land. And then nothing happens.
Mm. I love this because, as Ben will laugh, my pen ran out of ink. So we're talking about impactful, and we're talking about the stories, and it's about the delivery, and it's about the audience, but it's also the listener, the viewer. It's that important part you're reminding us of, changing the lens, changing the perspective, of adding the right seasoning. Or, my joke about a knish, and whether today's knish is from a different manufacturer than the knishes we love standing on lines at Katz's Deli in the city for. And the message is the story part. It's a comfort food.
Absolutely.
And the story part about how we would communicate it, and communicating it. And I appreciate it, because the way I told it to Ben before is not necessarily the way that we shared it with you. But what I loved was Gloria went around an expo with thousands of booths,
Mm-hmm.
almost 200 or 300,000 at that time square feet of exhibitor space.
Mm-hmm.
And she saw that they were giving out lanyards, and she was a psych nurse. And I joke, Gloria single handedly, the next year, everybody had breakaway lanyards
I
for
was just
people in
about to
healthcare.
ask whether people had breakaway lanyards or not, because most people never even think about that.
She went around showing people, because we were wearing different credentials,
Sure.
and we weren't wearing the normal lanyards. And she went around, and I left, because the next year, that was the thing.
Mm-hmm.
And she educated us how, from a healthcare perspective. But what I laughed was, she told the story to probably people from 20 different countries,
Very good.
and with care, with time. And we smiled later, because we realized that was her mission, because the next year, that was an industry standard. It was an option. But I think, like, as you're saying too, she really approached the innovate backwards. So thank you for reminding me of that.
You're welcome.
I think also the part about the inability to be bold. Some are unable to define or express what bold is, to people of different cultures, to people of different genders, generations, identities, different environments. If boldness and we were talking the other day about jokes, and wonderful, amazing client was mentioning how in the beginning nobody really could get their jokes. And then they learned the lens within which the jokes were being received.
Mm-hmm.
And now they really lean in with their own secret sauce and their secret spicing. And that, I think, is one of the gems of IamBenBaker.com that many people don't have the opportunity to realize. This gentleman is beyond brilliant. If I was a zillionaire, I would be the one to say, hey, Ben, we've got to do this together. But I know the one thing I really appreciate about your lens of communicating for growth is, for those of us who define scaling differently,
Mm-hmm.
you help us reimagine what growth really takes, what the ingredients are. So the growth part, we really have been all around the communicating, but the part about growth in this fragile world, how would you suggest we approach the growth part?
I think we all need to understand what growth means to each one of us. Do you know what a BHAG is? It's a big, hairy, audacious goal. And my goal is different from yours. It's different from Martin's. It's different from a bunch of different people. We each have a different moon that we shoot at. You know, I sit there and I'm looking at Alpha Centauri. Well, some people are looking to get out of the atmosphere. And none of those goals are wrong. None of those goals are right. It's what's right for you. And we all need to have something in our lives that scares us just a little bit every day. Something that sits there and goes, you know what? I did this yesterday. Maybe I'll try that tomorrow. And realizing that, you know what? There's very little that we can do in life that's not reversible. There's very little in our life that saying I'm sorry and can we fix this doesn't make things all right. There's very little that for a little bit of money and a little bit of time can't be rectified. And if we always play it safe, if we always stay within the boundaries of our little tiny square, we'll never get to realize what we individually and as an organization can be. And I think we need to surround ourselves with people who have different goals and different aspirations and different senses of comfort and different senses of risk because they push us. And they also show us that, all right, maybe I am way out there. Maybe I'm pushing for the stars, and maybe most people, they're quite happy if they make it to the moon. And that's okay. And I think that, it's not just saying our goals, it's also writing them down and sharing them with people. Because if I say I want to go to Alpha Centauri, that's one thing. If I can say, you know what, I want to go to Alpha Centauri, but I know how to do this, this, and this, but I have no idea how to get from here to there. Who are the people, who are the rocket scientists I need to align myself to get there? And be able to build those champions and build those, connections to be able to sit there and say, okay, I can't do everything myself. Let's find the people who've already been down those holes, that figured their way out, figured out a, wipe around them, and get them on my team and help them get me from where I am to where I need to be. But the first thing we need to do in each and every one of us is not to be afraid to take one step forward. And that's the thing, is that there's very little risk involved in taking one step forward and then another and then another and another, because essentially all you've done is taken one more step. But if you keep going along that path, you'll eventually get to where you want to be. And so we as human beings need to be able to articulate it. We need to build champions. We need to be humble enough to say, I don't know everything. I can't do everything. I need help. And be able to sit there and say, there's smarter people than me in the world. Cool. What have they learned already that I don't know? What questions have they asked that I haven't even thought of yet? All right, let's go ask them.
I love that, because you're reminding us of the responsive. And you'll laugh because I'm cracking up. This pen that stopped writing, this is one of those inexpensive pens from an industry leader that at the beginning of a trade show became like the pen that people were buying for the next 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm laughing. I'm delighted it's finally out of ink, because you're reminding me that part of it is the responsive part. So we talked about the bold, we talked about the impactful, we talked about responsive, and really you're helping us define growth. I think for some people with smaller personal brands,
Mm-hmm.
without the budgets of some of the larger, much larger brands, the dream of differentiation and the dream of boldness, where maybe it wasn't necessarily encouraged in our cultures, it wasn't necessarily encouraged during our upbringing. One of our delightful, uh, stellar guests and amazing supporters is Lachelle Atkins, America's Supermom with 15 children.
Wow.
And hashtag America's Supermom. Oh my goodness, I'm going to mention this to Lachelle, because Lachelle, she's got a TV station, she's got a podcast. Definitely
Awesome.
have to introduce the two of you. But I love watching her evolution from a responsiveness. And we met just before the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
And I had the opportunity during a year when we were celebrating milestone birthdays to really get to know wonderful children. And during the pandemic, she had 11 children at home.
Wow.
So to me, I think of responsive, I think of Lachelle, you know, because you're thinking of it from a family level, from a soul level, from the different ages, the different cultures. I think the thing that sometimes is the challenge is, and you helped us imagine this, is what is the language that our listener needs, active or deep listener, you know, children to octogenarians. What is, I like to think of it as a soul language, you know, of what lifts someone's spirit. On the other hand, I think from a personal branding perspective, we're not necessarily sure that we should let that person out to play.
But we should. I mean, here's the thing. I mean, I wrote my first book in 2018, Powerful Personal Brands, Hands-on Guide to Understanding Yours. And what I realized at the time is it doesn't matter if you're a brand of one or a brand of a million or 10 million or 100 million or billions. We all have the ability to differentiate, because here's the thing. We live in a world where people have commoditized themselves. We do just enough to be able to sit there and say, will somebody buy? Great. They buy? Fine, good enough. And we move on. And we don't wow our customers. We don't care about our customers. We don't talk to our customers. We don't find out what we could do better for our customers. We don't do those little things to be extraordinary. And trust me, it's little things. I mean, God, wish I could remember the name of the hotel, but there's a hotel out there that gives you a goldfish in your room. Just so, if you're traveling by yourself, it gives you a sense of companionship, of something that, when you're away from home and you're traveling on business and you're isolated by yourself, and it gives you a goldfish, just something that can be in the room with you, another living individual. And it's just, how do we just say good morning? How do we look people in the eye and say, how are you? And not put up with the I'm fine. No, how are you? And actually take the time, whether it makes you $1, $1 million, or nothing, to actually sit there and listen to people. How many of your clients do you know their wives' names, or their husbands' names, or their kids' names, or the fact that their mother-in-law has cancer, or that their kid just graduated from university? How many of your clients do you actually know their birthdays, and just on LinkedIn that morning, not just because you got a response, but because you have it on a calendar somewhere, you say, hey, happy birthday, I hope you have a great day. Or how often do you find an article somewhere online that you went, this would be great for these 15 people, and send them a note, say, hey, I thought of this individually, saw this, thought this would be valuable to you, and send it off their way. None of this costs a dime, but 99% of people don't do it. And it's those little things. It's humans acting humanely with other humans. And when we communicate, when we listen, when we care, when we understand, when we value, when we empathize, we all of a sudden become elevated in other people's minds. Because all of a sudden we went from being a transactional relationship where, okay, well, they're close by, okay, I'll go buy it there. Or they're a little bit cheaper, they're a pain in the butt, but okay, they're a little cheaper, I'll buy it. To saying, you know what? I don't care if they're more expensive. I'm going to buy from them. Going back to lanyards, let's tell a story about lanyards. 20 years ago, I did 30,000 lanyard order for a customer of mine. And they were supposed to be double-sided lanyards. They were, we saw the proof. The proof was double-sided. The sample was double-sided. Somehow or other, somebody wrote on the order single-sided lanyards. It happened. Somebody had 30,000 lanyards showed up that were single-sided. The guy didn't say, let me give you a discount. The guy didn't say, could you help me out and buy these lanyards? He said, nope, we made a mistake. And he not only ordered another 30,000 lanyards, but he had them air rushed to me in time for an event. I've probably bought over 20 years, 1.5 million lanyards from him, and I don't care if he's 5 cents, 10 cents, $1 more expensive. I can care less. Because he built a relationship and he took care of me and he didn't make me look stupid in front of my customer. And those are the things that we all remember. Did you make me look stupid in front of a customer? Did you make me look stupid in front of my boss? Did you put me in an uncomfortable position? Did you put me in a position where I had to lie to somebody to cover for you? Guess what? I'm never coming back. But if you're the one that sits there and goes, yep, hands up, my fault, 100%, I'm sorry, how do I take care of this? And we own up to it. And we realize our mistakes and we sit there and say, how do we make this better for you? And how do we make sure that this is impactful? And most of the time, hopefully it's not going to cost you money, but if it does, it does. That's business. That's life. We own up to our mistakes. And the people that do that, the people that say, hey, I'm sorry, I made a mistake, how do we fix this? Are the ones that people remember. It's the Maya Angelou. People always remember how you made them feel. If we can make people feel that they know that we take care of them, they will communicate to others that story and all of a sudden bring customers to you.
I love listening to you. And not just because you're one of the kindest humans that I've had the pleasure of meeting, but because of the grace you hold within each space. I really just want to say thank you for that. If until the day when I can pop up as with the knishes instead of torturing you, that there was a warm knish its way. I think too, Ben, the communicating for growth, you're reminding us that we're not just speaking for ourselves. We're not just speaking for a brand. We're not speaking for a thing. It's a lot more than the integrity piece, the credibility piece. It's the accountability piece. Whether it's being more supportive, whether it's having an eye. But I really love that you're reminding us of that journey of differentiation. If you're stuck for our listeners with employers who don't quite get it, whose workplaces aren't necessarily the environment that we may be describing right now, I'd love for you to sit back and think of somebody amazing to introduce to IamBenBaker.com. Because I think if we don't increase the responsiveness, we don't increase the sensitivity, if we don't increase the performance, the productivity, the kindness, we'll continue to be burnt out in a world that makes us want to hide or suppress our voices. What I love that Ben said too, Ben reminded me of a hashtag I've loved for a long time, a Mel hashtag, elevate your blend. Yes. Because if we don't think of how to elevate, if we don't think how to differentiate, we'll never get to the journey that we could get to. Ben, what would you like to leave our listeners with? And you have to come back later.
I'm always happy to come back. You tell me when, and I'll be there. We'll set another date, and we'll have this. Sorry, I love when things are bent, broken, or bedlam. I truly do. I love walking into organizations that are having communication issues, that are having people process and procedure issues. People that are a revolving door at HR, companies that are in crisis, companies that are, in merger and acquisition, and it's just not going well, or products that don't like go to market as effectively as they should be. It's all communication. It's, yes, there's procedures, yes, there's process, but it's how do we communicate with each other to understand what's gone well, what hasn't gone well, what are the challenges, what are the opportunities. And if I can help companies with that, if I can be that strategic voice, either on a consultative basis or within your organization on a national or international basis, get in touch with me at iambenbaker.com. Book 30 minutes. Let's have a conversation, free of charge, and let's talk about opportunities. Let's talk about where you are and where you want to be, and let's help you get there together.
I love that. Not just because you're leaning into a Millism now, which is have a magnificent day filled with opportunities and possibilities, but you're really reminding us stay present, stay aware, stay focused,
Mm-hmm.
and kind of stick to the core, whether it's the values, the mission, but really think about communicating for growth in the healthiest possible way. So your messages get delivered, so everybody understands, so we appear to be on the same page, even though some of us read faster or slower. Some of us like hardcover, some of us like paperback, some may like Audible, others may prefer a podcast. But
Mm-hmm.
no matter how we're consuming and how we're sharing, Ben's reminding us at the core that communicating for growth. Breathe in, it's the only way. And we'll keep sharing these wonderful messages until we make this a lighter, brighter, less fragile world.
Well, all we can do is do one step at a time and one person at a time, and hope that the message resonates and the message gets passed along. And that's what this world is about. It's about influencing those you can influence, you know, being with the people you can be with, and giving them the tools to spread the message.
I want to thank you for that frame. As tomorrow I present on identifying your trust opportunities, and I really want to thank you for keeping that bookmark in my gray cells and every other cell, and I really will hold that wonderfully to my heart as we cherish you and we welcome you as a guest to Impossible Live, and want to just thank you for Ben, for the gems you're sharing, and your stellar support.
Thanks. And one last thing to all your listeners: if you like the brilliance that Mel is bringing to the table, and she does every single week, connect with her, hire her, utilize her talents. She can offer a lot of value. Utilize it. Be there. Mel, thank you for your time. Thank you for your energy. Thank you for your passion.
Thank you, Ben, for gracing Impossible Live and for joining us today. And for our listeners live and on replays, we hope that you will share this gem, Ben's Gems. We're actually going to talk more about those delightful books as potential titles, because I think Ben can help us get unstuck. And we need that to kind of keep on moving and keep asking others the question, what's your story? Even if you're unable to ask them, how are you doing today? Take the chance to investigate, to inquire, to show up in a way that's really caring. Ben, have a magnificent day filled with opportunities and possibilities. And I hope you stay safe, stay well, stay inspired, and please stay in touch. But take great
Absolutely.
care.
And thank you for sharing the mic with me.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you so much. And thanks to our listeners. And thank you so much for joining us today. Take great care. Be well.